Shamir wangu on 104.5 Vibes Radio. Kev, your local energy provider. Help uko fiti out there. Yo, remember www.vibesradio.co.ke to go live on the website, also on Facebook at Vibes Radio KE, as well as on YouTube. Na pia unaweza tupata kwa frequently here in Nairobi it's 104.5, in Mombasa 98.7, Nyeri 98.8, alafu Meru 107.1, Eldoret 106.2. We're Africa's #1 audiovisual reggae and dancehall station. Na liliwa show maze so exciting, so fired up because we're hanging out with the one and only Faith Adhiambo. She's the LSK President, Law Society of Kenya. Karibu sana, Madam President.
Asante.
Unafilaje this maandamano Tuesday morning?
Nasikia agitated and a bit jittery.
Oh, really?
I'm worried what would happen.
Manze.
I've been seeing the tone. The Gen Zs are very angry. The head of state is also very angry. And so I'm like, how do we bring down these two warring factions? That we need to sit down and have a conversation.
Exactly.
Because you feel the energies that is around everyone. There's a lot of anger going around as a country. It can't be productive.
Also, I'm a jam. People are, I don't want to say hopeless, but people, okay, maybe hopeless is the word. Yeah, no one knows what to expect in the future. What wajui kama the president will actually give in to their demands fully, right? At the same time, what are you expecting? Nimejua unaweza notice ki pattern flani every time there's a maandamano. So what are you expecting?
You know, I expect people to come out to the streets, which is my fear, and worse off, I fear people going to JKIA because, you know, of course, police officers are going to be there, and the fear that I have is that just picking up from the tone of the head of state and the anger that he expressed on Sunday, and everyone who's been talking about it, enough is enough. Then my fear is that the police might also pick up on that tone. And the kind of force that may be used may be quite different. And also just picking up on the tone that I've listened to the different ex-species, wase wakiongea, you just feel that there's another sense of either mix of frustration, hopelessness, and anger, that they feel that this is the only way to get heard. This is the only way that we can express yourself. This is the only way to make a change. And we need to, you know, put these two warring factions in a room, and one to listen and one to learn to talk, so that they can be something different.
That's interesting. So ukiangalia, in fact, the only way we should start this conversation ni tuangalie nini na happen kwa magazeti. I've got a copy of the Daily Nation and the Standard. So the Standard wanasema moment of truth. Who will budge? President William Ruto amesema he has had enough of the protests, but the youth are relentless. He will have to listen to what they have to say. Today, Nairobi is expected to be hard hit by the demonstrations, with the youth planning to barricade major roads and occupy JKIA. The heat is already being felt in the NGO world, with the government cracking down on perceived funders of the dissent. Historic kwa page 6, 8 and 9. Alafu wameandika hapa hivi protest hotspots in Nairobi. So while you're out there, na maybe utakuwa kwa hizi maere nenda kukushow, tafadhali be careful. Na kama una kitu yote kwa barabara, in case of any accident or an incident, anything hata related to maandamano, we ni show manze. So protest hotspots in Nairobi: Mlolongo, Nairobi Expressway, Parliament Buildings, Nyayo Stadium, Uhuru Park, JKIA entrances and terminals, City Cabanas, Outer Ring Road, North Airport Road. And then 15, this is the number of counties that are set to experience turbulence from the political protests today. You know, it's interesting, yesterday the president sounded like he was so angry. Enough is enough. Do you think the president will budge? Do you think, I can also ask you, what can the president do right now in this given very, very, very moment kujaribu kutone down hizi vitu zote zinaendelea kwa country?
I think what the president can do to tone down is also change his stance and his tone as he speaks, because people pick up and people are responding with equal measure. And what he needs to change his stance, like the second statement he issued after 25th, that second statement was a presidential statement. That was a president reaching out to the people. That was a president acknowledging things have not gone right. That was a president trying to reach out to his people. And unfortunately, he's the head of state. There's no other head of state. And being the father of the nation, he's the one who must lead the direction of the country, and leading that direction in terms of us talking about justice and reconciliation and bridging for peace and looking forward in terms of changes. I saw yesterday at Parliament, the PS for Treasury was talking about they have listened and they're making amends and they're trying to focus on the expenditure and trying to cut down. And so they're saying things are different. We are not going to continue in the same trajectory. And once the head of state picks that tone, then also his perceived followers or minions will also pick up the same trajectory, because what we are seeing is some of his strongest supporters at Kenya Kwanza are picking up arrogant rhetoric. And so people feel, and that is now angering people more, because people are feeling like there's nothing learned, there's no change, because if his own people, his parliamentarians are talking smack at us, they're talking in jest, there's no care at all, then it means that there was no impact, there's no change. And what the people want to see is that there'll be actually some changes going to happen in this country. That we're going to look at how we focus on corruption.
Correct.
That we're going to clamp down. And you see, corruption is not just at the national government. Corruption is also at the counties. So and also how we use the CDF, how we use the GAF fund. There are so many avenues and questions that people are raising, and even at the different parastatals that people are identifying, corruption is ongoing. So what the people want to see is that the tone starts with the head of state. So the head of state can make a determination that he's going to crack down on corruption. That is things that he can do to actually show people that there is a change.
I want to go back to your statement Prezoli make jana. He's saying he's gonna do everything possible to stabilize this country where the democracy is if people are mad at the government, they have to use democratic means. And his tone is, like you said, didn't really stand out. So should Gen Zs take the statements by the president yesterday as a threat to them?
Unfortunately, it sounds like it's a threat. But ideally, in a democratic society, people should be able to air their views, their dissents, and as well as people should be able to express themselves within that same constitution. And the reality is, even for the Gen Zs, we can only express ourselves within the limits of the constitution.
Clearly.
Because what the Gen Zs are fighting for is that we actually have a living, breathing constitution. So that means that they must also be mindful that the constitution has provisions on how and changes can be made and things can be done as a nation and as a people. So they also need to be mindful of that in any event, that we cannot also exercise extra constitutional measures within if we want to protect that same constitution. But the president as well, being the head, must also recognize that as the father of the nation, these are steps that people are raising concerns because they feel there's a failure in the various structures in government. They feel the executive have failed them. They feel that parliament has failed them. They feel that part of the judiciary have failed them. I've listened to expresses, people saying that we will go to court, but the executive will ignore court orders. So first and foremost, the head of state needs to make a declaration they will obey court orders. Because when he got into power, part of his promises arising from the previous government, he swore in the judges that had not been sworn in by the previous head of state, and he made a declaration he was going to uphold court orders. And I always say it starts with the head of state. Because the moment he started ignoring court orders, then you see the rest of the executive and the counties now starting to ignore court orders, because they're saying, what are you going to do? In any event, this is the tone that has been picked up in the country. So he sets the tone, even in terms of any sit down, any talks towards reconciliation, he has to be the one that sets the tone. He has to be the one that takes the lead. And so to bring back this country into some sense of normalcy and for people to sit down and have that accountability and transparency, he has to set that tone.
Well, the president is saying, back to Gen Z's, skiza nime give in to your demands. Nili dissolve Gava. That's cabinet secretaries. Alibanizi, a couple of austerity measures, for example, no more funding to the First Lady's office, Second Lady spouse to the PCS. What else? Izi Maharambe, and many others. Quite a number. Adi alisema niliwa invite kwa X Spaces, hamuku come through, manze, vile mulikuwa mnadai. So you guys can't hold me at ransom. I've kind of given in to your demands. Ni nini mnataka? Hata hamna leadership, hamna face, mko formless. What more do you want, Gen Zs? Is the president right? Are Gen Zs being hypocritical? Tunasumbua tu preso for nothing.
Sidani. You know, number one, he held the X space. It had a bit of challenges here and there, but eventually we saw people commenting and sharing their views and raising concerns and directing to particular members of his cabinet, which they felt were failing. They talked about having competent cabinet secretaries. I think a majority were able to join or listen in to what was going in the X space. So he actually held that X space. And there's even the person who apparently hosted him that has suffered censure all through because of hosting the X space. So you cannot say the X space did not happen. The question is, did you pick from the X space the issues? Because the challenge is your team or his team should be picking up what are the issues that are being raised that need to be dealt with.
Correct.
Secondly, yes, I agree, he dissolved cabinet, which was a show of good faith. He dismissed his cabinet. However, the concern the Gen Z says is that then you regurgitate some of them and you bring them back to us. So the question is, why did you remove them if you are going to only bring them back? Then you'd have said you're going to do a reshuffle. Instead of doing you dissolve, because now they feel there's already a sense of mistrust in the presidency, and so people don't see or are not willing to see that there's actually goodwill in even making these changes if they see people coming back. So there's a huge mistrust in the country, and that's ideally where things are going wrong. Then we have the issue of the offices of the First Lady, Second Lady. You know, he's done the constitutional thing. Exactly. That's the right thing to do. It's not a favor that you've done to the people of Kenya. You're doing actually what you ought to do. You're following the law. And it's unfortunate that thereafter we see that it will take them over 591 million to clear out those offices for those staff, because people are telling you this education is an issue, healthcare is an education, yet you want to spend 591 million or more to pay people redundancy, which were unconstitutional offices in the first place. So you are not doing people favors. You are breaking the law by setting those offices. Now you have said you're removing them. Make goodwill. CDF is one of the courts had decided is unconstitutional. Why is it still there? There are low-hanging fruits that the president can pick on. It may seem unpopular to his members of parliament, but you're doing the right thing. Exactly. And that's how you rebuild trust. The problem that the head of state has is that people believed in him so much. People had a lot of faith in him. And he carried particularly the younger generation who are looking for opportunities, that someone wants to work to gain from the sweat of their brow. That I will be able to go to school, I'll be able to work hard, I'll be able to get a job. But tell me that I go to school all these years and then you are telling me to go and work menial jobs outside the country. There's no even essence of pride. You know, there is a beauty in working in your own home. You don't face the discrimination people will face when they're working outside the country. I tell you, sometimes in certain countries you will see the stark difference by the color of your skin, but working in your home country, working amongst your people, there is a sense of pride in being able to work in your own home, see development flourishing, being able to support your parents who have struggled for you, being able to support your home country. There's that patriotism that you feel that I'm actually building and making a difference.
I want to jump in there. Unajua kuna research ilifanywa by a friend of ours anaitwa Nerima Wako, you probably know her. apparently many Gen Zs kwanza walikuwa nasema wakapata chance ya kwenda kufanya job majuu, you know, ama even to just study there and live there. Yeah, it's a huge percentage, right? Guys want to go to America, UK, sijui wapi. Yeah, so when you look at easy maandamanos, you know, people are pissed. Everyone has their own individual reason for being pissed. Yeah. When I get watu wamona maparo wao wakisafa, you know, guys have seen even their parents dying young because of stress. And so if you look at the psyche of many young Kenyans out there, wasoko in a state of apathy. Unaget, but wanasema prezo ni kama harelate yani. Na alikuwa amesema any hustler when he was getting into government, right? Interesting. Jana nilifungwa phone lines. Talking about whatever was going to happen today. What are our expectations as youth? Na kuna chali all the way from Likoni, a very, very regular call of ours, anaitwa OT. Alikuwa nasema, oh, you know, my rallying call to the youth out there ni, maze tusiende maandamano. These guys are abducting us, they're killing us. It's getting out of hand. We're losing too many great young lives. Now I say wanaweza kuwa productive in the future. You know, they can add resource to our country. Do you support this idea by a certain quarter of Kenyans, where especially young Kenyans who are saying, you know what, tungoje tu 2027. At this point, even going out there, you know, airing our frustrations is just not working as much as it's our constitutional right. What's your response to you know, that thought process?
The thought process is also justified. I say it because having worked and seen stories of certain victims, even as we take statements, the people who are still quite petrified, even the thought of coming to give evidence.
Yes.
We held the first citizens assembly, and you saw the way that mother was really expressing herself with so much, you know, pain because of having to look for her child, and she cannot find her child.
Manze.
We've seen stories of, you know, people who are involved and saw their friends dying, but they are so afraid, and even their parents are so afraid of them coming to give evidence, that they do not want to meet with IPOA anywhere. They are afraid of the DCI calling them because they fear that they'll be the next target. And so it's true, in this country there are people who are living in a lot of fear,
yes,
and still need that reassurance that this is a free country, this is a democratic country, that we are not moving towards the Moi days.
Right.
So I can understand where they're coming from, and they're saying, let's work within the constitution. Still 2027 will be able to exercise our rights. Take out your voters, ensure you have an ID, take out your voters card, let's go out and make a difference then. But the thing that is frustrating some, that they even are not thinking that thought process, is because they fear either that, you know, the same old is going to happen. The politicians will come and pour money. There'll be no real discussion on issues. We are now having rhetoric of tribalism coming back, things that we thought we were moving away from. Tribalism is seeping back into our politics once again, and people will feel the same way they felt before. What is the point of voting?
Correct.
Yet I won't see a change. And so the agitation right now is more for, let's start seeing a change. You see, once the head of state raises the bar, he raises the standard in terms of fighting corruption, in terms of taking a strong stand on some of these things, any presidential candidate coming thereafter will not be able to lower that bar.
Exactly.
We see Kibaki raised the bar with regards to access to information, our human rights, this new constitution that we have, and also allowing freedom of expression. And that's why you see Kenyans are hard-pressed and fighting to protect that freedom of expression.
Correct.
People are able to share information, people are able to talk about issues to a huge extent, things that were not there Kibaki leadership. So he raised the bar to that extent. The question is, will the current head of state also take that mantle, take it positively, and raise the bar, that even come 2027, the youth will be thinking, this president went through this, we raised our views, we raised our concerns where the country was going, and was able to change the trajectory of how the country was veering to. Then the youth will be able to see that indeed in him lies a president that is able to change in instances, looking at where the country is going and looking at our future.
We're going to talk about also whatever's happening in Bangladesh. Mazoko ni no, man. I can't believe it. I saw even the Prime Minister had to Vamus. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you think this is a revolutionary moment going on in the country?
I think it's a revolutionary moment, and it's a constitutional moment. And it depends on how we look at it. I've seen leaders, some saying that, now we are not able to engage in church services, we're not able to do this, we're not able to do this, which I agree, because there's been also destruction of private property. But also there are leaders who are now talking, let's talk about the systemic vices that are there. Let's talk about the injustices that continue to be perpetuated and you lay over them. You see, it's a simmering anger that has exploded in this particular moment.
Okay.
And I say that you may realize that it's not wholly the problem or by reason of this current head of state, but these have been simmering problems that have developed over time. The question of unemployment, the question of corruption that they have seen growing exponentially over time. And so this is a moment that people have finally exploded. People are saying, even them, enough is enough. We cannot continue to see our country going down this trajectory. Let us rise up together and say, as a nation, as a people, we want our country to be accountable, transparent. Let's have services that actually work. Let's ensure that we secure a future, not just for ourselves. It's not it's my turn to eat, but it's my time to build for this generation and for generations to come.
All right, that is the LSK president, Faith Adhiambo. We're talking about not yet freedom. That is what many young guys wanasema huko nje. Alafu niko na swali tu, very very easy, very chill. Unaenda kutana hizi maandamano Tuesday. They're saying #Occupy Mombasa Road, mara #Occupy JKIA. Hey, itakuwa tall order, but also wako determined. We're coming back in a bit. It's 7:30. Kumbuka ikifika 7:45, phone lines are open on 0719010700.
Your all day, every day vibe station. Africa's #1 reggae radio station. This is Vibes Radio from Nairobi to the world. This is the modern vibes on Vibes Radio.
Ujiangalie Nyashinski na Sauti Soul, manze. Damn. You know, you can actually stream live, www.vibesradio.co.ke. My guys, took on the LSK president in the building, Faith Adhiambo, and we're talking about state of the nation, not yet freedom in the 254. Nomesikia vile kina Sauti Solo mebanja hapo hivyo. Tunafaa kujiangalia. Self-reflection, right? The people who are out there, mazee wanasema, you know what? I'm going to fight for the soul of this country. Madam President, ukicheki vile mavijana walikuwa najitokeza manze from the 18th of was it June?
Yes.
Alafu tena ile the next one 25th. What was going on through your mind? Unacheki hadi wasana madwa, you know, guys are there fighting, crying, passionate, saying hadi wasana bia makara, we're fighting for you guys. Why can't you see this thing manze? You know, are you surprised that we're in this particular position? Ama ulianza kuicheki kitambo? You just knew. You know, it's funny, hata hapa hivi tukikuwa na guests, some of them walikuwa nasema, you know Kevin, this is a time bomb. Youth unemployment is through the roof. Hii kitu tunakometa kwa revolution. Did you see it coming, by the way, as well?
I say that no, I didn't see it coming, because I've been on Twitter, I've been on Facebook. You know, I know Facebook is for old people, but yeah, I'm on Facebook as well. And I see the arguments, and also as Sauti Soul and Nashinsky say, tujiangalie, tunapigana Twitter. And it's true, people fight on Twitter, people were talking on Twitter, but you know, actually removing faces from Twitter and bringing them to the ground, that was the shocking thing.
Yeah.
Because I remember on 18th, we had that there'd be a mandamano, and I was like, really, how many people will come out or turn out? And I had gone for a memorial funeral. So when I'm leaving is when I get a call that, you know, people are in Central, people cannot access. And I'm not a great visitor of Central Police. Now I'm like a regular. I'm a regular. That's my regular pub, so to speak, in quotes. So when we got there is where we see what's happening, and we spent most of the part of the day till late in the night.
Okay.
But it surprised me because I saw very, very many young people coming together on the streets. And I'd say that the first two mandaman, on 18th, then the Thursday, were sort of pretty much peaceful.
Yeah.
You'd see it was people with their music dancing in the street, with, you know, the local artists coming to join in, singing along as they chant with, you know, and just showing they have come out on the streets to just raise their voice. And I think at that particular time, if the police would have taken cue and just guided the procession, things would have turned out quite differently. And I think because of that misconception that these are kids, they don't know anything, they're just doing this as a fad and they'll go back. And now trying to scare them using the tear gas got them more angry and agitated, because you also have a huge number who are unemployed, a huge number that are well-read, that are highly educated, that are quite sharp. And they feel the frustration that they cannot get to the next level, either because they don't know someone, we don't have access to funds, you don't have the right connections, you're not in the right tribe, and so many other things that they feel have brought them down. And for the first time, they say they are sitting together somewhere, or even in a van being picked to be taken to some police station, irrespective of social class, irrespective of who do you know, what do you know, we are all the same, because we are struggling with the same problem, and we are seeing where our country is going, and we're seeing there needs to be a change. Coming down 25th, I can say I was shocked. 25th, I woke up quite early, and that morning I was a bit frazzled, because that was the morning that my PA was picked up as well.
Alikuwa abducted?
Yes, he was. Yes. And so I remember doing a very and I was a bit disoriented at the moment, but I said there are people who are looking for leadership, and so I can't break down now. And we did a statement, and we read a statement on the abduction. He was later released, but we found ourselves right in the heart of town. And what I could tell is that you could see the numbers. It was shocking.
Yeah, man.
It was quite shocking. And then I watched as at Supreme Court, I watched as things changed from a peaceful to very aggressive mood, because once the police shot the first person, the second, by the time they shot the third person, people now said it doesn't matter, you kill us all, and you've already killed us, so you've killed 3 of us, so now it doesn't matter. People got to a moment that they didn't care. That's when people now are fighting to disable the water tankers. People were coming right at the front to be shot with the tear gas canisters. People were now showing no fear at all.
I remember it was so chaotic, but pia tuliona kulikuwa na massive legal representation by LSK, and I'm curious, how's that going right now, by the way? Are you guys still representing Kenyans out there?
We're still representing, because...
And why did you decide to, get out there and do that?
Well, on the 18th, when... particularly after we got word that people were not allowed, I also have a huge number of Gen Zs that people don't recognize. I have very young lawyers who are quite active. And so when they had some had already gotten to the police station, because some had friends there, some who had been arrested. And so when we got there, and I think the police thought the best thing is to tear gas us, I think it's now reignited some of their fire, because we came back and I now had a huge number. And when word got out that the police have tear gassed our president, more young lawyers and other mid-bar and senior lawyers came in, because they were like, what is going on? We've never had a scenario like that. And it actually re-energized them, because now they saw that, you see, if you think that by, tear gassing us and doing this, you will stop us, then now you'll reinforce our zeal to support. And the aim was that we recognize these are young people who just want to express themselves.
Correct.
How can we support as well? Because as lawyers, we know the law, we can prevent abuse by the police. We have seen them moving people from police station to police station. At certain times, when they realize they've kept you over 24 hours, they will not book you in. They'll release you somewhere in the middle of the night. We've seen them trying even to question and get people to write down statements. And I'm trying to profile individuals based on tribe, on sexual orientation and things like that. And so if lawyers didn't come in to prevent that, then we'd be seeing different scenarios. And so we said, as advocates, the best way that we can offer support is by giving free legal representation for those who are engaged in just peaceful protests.
Peaceful protests.
So we were not people who are involved in stealing, in destroying, because I also saw goons, and the goons would come behind the group. So you'd see even on 25th, as they progressed, the goons would come at the back, and that's where there would be destruction of property. In fact, I also lost property. My car was totally vandalized, partly burned. In fact, word out there, if they can find my ID, that is so sentimental.
ID yako bado imelost?
ID yangu imelost bana. Kwanza, I have this crazy ID that I saw Ministry of Interior trying to justify. An ID is expiring in 10 years. So I have that ID as well. And I'm saying, they need to rethink that position, because an ID, remember, historically was a way of, identifying you like an animal. So telling us now we need to renew it again. Surely. Any justification, if they can find a chip, let them find a chip that will last the test, or just needs, swiping to renew it. We can't, an ID should just be merely for identification. You shouldn't have to keep paying for you to get to be identified.
So speaking of legal representation, kuna watu bado wame lost apparently. Watu walikuwa abducted. Some of them have not yet gone back home. Now, when you guys did your own investigations, what is the exact number ya Wakenya wali lost, walikuwa abducted? Do you have that kind of data? Kwa sababu it's not so clear. Now, we can't, it's almost as if atuwezi rely on whatever the government is telling us.
We work with Kenya National Commission of Human Rights as one of the partners that we have been working jointly to just collate, because we do the legal representation, but by virtue that they are commission, they have access, they can demand for information, they can go to various institutions. As lawyers, sometimes they can refuse, and even either you go with the IPOA, and sometimes even IPOA is reluctant to share information. They want to see what information do you have instead. And also the challenge is a lot of the people who come to us also don't want to be involved with IPOA or DCI, because they feel that there's no safety by coming to report through them. So the numbers as by the commission is that about 59 have been abducted since. Number of released is what I still don't have the numbers since, because I remember the last time we updated 40 had been released. But now we are getting more numbers in terms of people who are still missing and trying to trace them. Some since 25th.
What's the number? When you bado hawajapatikana? We're
getting about 15 that are still missing, and we are still trying to compile our different reports, because they're different actors. We have not been able to yet set a camp in certain areas that people are complaining they could have been massive deaths or not. So we're trying to just collate as we can. Our toll-free line is still on. We've been asking members to come forward. The Law Society is open to you. The different partners we work with, like Amnesty, Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, as well, who are collecting this information. To be able to just put together what is the exact number. And, the challenge that we have is even the number of deaths. You can only collate information based on the bodies you have confirmed at the mortuary. And right now that there are also tricks by the police in terms of recording deaths using fake details, like those who were killed in Kitengela saying they were hit and run in Juja, yet they died out of bullet wounds. It now makes the search harder and more difficult.
Let me ask you, what about the situation that happened in Githurai? Any idea on the actual data?
No. I don't have an idea of the actual data. And yes, so we are trying to see how we can set a joint initiative to set camp and call members of the public to try and give information. But what is now a reality for us is we have to find a way to first give psychosocial support before we can even think of calling people to come and give information, because the reality is people are very scared. And so even that thought of coming out to give evidence, people feel like you'll be identified. If they hear that you've come to this place, then you'll easily pick them out and say, this person is the one who's giving information.
How say wakikwanga released? Okay, obviously they're scared, but how do they look like? Wanakwanga wamekwanga tortured ama I mean, are they just numb? They don't really want to talk? What's going on when you see them like this?
Some are numb. They don't really want to talk. I would say like seeing Billy was more of kept repeating, I just want to eat something. And then he was trying to talk a bit. Then this Dr. Austin, the day he was found, so after we gave the statement, like about 2 or 3 hours, he was found. So his brother called us. We came back to try and help him record the statement, but he was totally clamped down. He didn't want to record. He didn't want to say anything. He said he just wants to go home. Then we have the story of Ernest and Nadia, who were able to share their story. And then you've seen Okayo, who I think he's the first one that shared with us that he had been tortured. In fact, when we got where he had been dropped off and the school was able to send a bus to come and pick him, because he called a bit in the morning and it took him a while.
Yes.
And then also the PA of one of the members of parliament as well. He later on called, but after he was taken to hospital, he didn't talk for a while. He said he just needed some time to just understand what has happened.
Yeah.
And so they are the first two that said they were tortured physically, because others would talk about more psychological and fear and telling them if you do this, if you do, and asking them questions on where the funding is coming from and things like that. But those were the first two that actually said they were tortured. And then unfortunately, after the disappearance of Denzel, we see him coming back dead. And so I think exponentially seeing things like that and seeing more who have disappeared for quite long coming, we find them in mortuaries, then now this is what is raising the fear that people don't even want to come and share their story.
But also kwanga abducted, are they able to identify the abductors?
No, most of them, the story is that their head was covered, their hands were tied. At least from what I've heard, mostly the zip tags on your hands, and your head is covered the entire time. So you're not able to see where you are. You're just hearing the different voices, whoever is talking to you, and they call each other on code names.
What?
So you don't even now know who.
Hey, nika movie, man.
I'm telling you.
XOP. Ebubonga na 15 AY. Anyway, I'm just joking.
Yeah, but it's surreal that it's happening at a time like this in 2024. These are things that I think most of the Gen Zs have watched on movies.
Ama walisikia zikihappen days amoy.
Yeah, but I'm sure most of them even haven't had it. But now that this is happening, that is when that conversation is coming back and people asking, this actually happened. Yeah.
Let me ask you, quick one before I open the phone lines. Remember, my guys, unaweza piga simu, we have the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Madam Faith Adhiambo. For example, mimi ni mkazi wa Githurai, ama whatever part. My daughter has been abducted. I'm a parent to a Gen Z. Ama memado, ama hata sizi mtrace. Nifanye nini, nende wapi? I can't go to the same police officers who Wakenya wanafikiria watu wana abduct watoto wao, watu ndo wana murder the same kids. Now, what should I do as a parent?
Come to LSK, come and report the case, or come to Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. We'll be able to take your case, and we can organize even IPOA officers to come and record your statements as well.
Yes.
And if you have to go to the police, we can accompany you, and as well as see how we work together with the Witness Protection Agency, that you get into witness protection if you feel that you're not safe and your vicinity is not safe anymore. But we've had a lot of people even going to record statements in DCI and are calling to LSK to get a lawyer to accompany them, be able to just go through the processes. And so LSK has been still offering that support. So even if you're going to record any statement, you don't need to fear. LSK can always come hand in hand with you, and IPO is also willing to come to LSK offices or the preferred areas together with LSK for you to record your statement.
So wacha tuongea na Wakenya wawili watatu. Remember 0719012700. Piga simu guys.
Hey, baba boy, gas imeisha, shopping imeisha, na ujue tokens bado zinalia.
Msupa, nipe mbao na 20 minutes.
Mbao, like 20 bob. 20 minutes, kwani kuna nini? Na ujue mi nataka kupika haki.
Jaber, kwani ujui dakika mamili ni every 20 minutes. Halafu wanapeana 10 million every 20 minutes na hadi kuna 3 millionaires every hour.
Taka mamili virahisi. Uko na nafasi 3 ya kuwa millionaire kila hour. Usipitwe. Cheza Daka. Ushike mita yako sasa. Chagua nambari zako 4 za bahati and win up to 10 million every 20 minutes. Nenda kwenye paybill 440440. Account, vibes, amount. Cheza na shilingi 20 hadi shilingi 2,000 na ushinde mamilioni. Daka Mita, kuwa bingwa. More vibes to keep you moving.
Hey, once again, 0719012700. Guys, tuko na the LSK president, Madam Faith Adhiambo. We're talking about Maandamano Tuesdays. Vile vitu you go down. We've clearly noticed a pattern where many Kenyans wanakuanga abducted, wase wanamadwa, nini. And right now, pia tumechiki. Well, actually, the police... ukiangalia kwa the standard wamesema hizi ndo sasa the protest hotspots in Nairobi, Mlolongo, Nairobi Expressway, Parliament Buildings, Nyayo Stadium, Uhuru Park, JKA entrances and terminals, City Cabanas, Outer Ring Road and North Airport Road. All right, Victor, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Uko fiti Victor?
Uko salama nashukuru.
Smart sana buda. Tuko hapa hivi na the LSK president. Uko na swali ama comment? Marabu kam.
Now, I'd like to ask you the question. I understand LSK eco formed under, eco recognized by the government. It was formed under a law. But so my question is, since LSK is an independent body, how do they ensure that kama LSK we don't get any influence by any we don't get any infiltration from government people?
How independent is the LSK?
Yes, another question I'd like to shoot. In ile case, there's some cop that it's really evident who cops did something sinister. It's like who cop ali murder someone and the evidence is out there.
Yeah.
So how can we ensure that who cop is held accountable? Since to corner the evidence and we have all the footages and all.
Yeah.
How do you ensure to file a case against this cop and justice comes to light? Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, my brother. Samido, Samido kutoka Nyeri. Samido, mambo vipi bro?
Dada.
Ishakuwa mazapa vitu kuna LSK president Madam Faith Adhiambo. Kuna swali bro? Ama comment?
Ni kwanza kitu nilikuwa nataka kwanza kuambia serikali. Kabla niulize swali. Nilikuwa nataka kuambia prezo aje.
Yes.
Ache kusema ati Genzi inafandiwa na Ford Foundation. Watu wenye wanafandi Ford Foundation ni akianziwa na yeye mwenyewe. Unajua anafandi kiaje?
Kivipi?
Alidanganya watu waje akiingia huko atabadilisha Kenya uchumi irudi chini. Yeye alikuja akafanya opposite. Unaona?
Yes.
Hiyo ni funding moja ya kufanya watu watokee maandamano. Hiyo ingine ni Lenturi analetea watu fertilizer yenye iko na mawe. Unaona? Hiyo ndio vitu yenye inafandi, hiyo ndio vitu inafandi watu wanatokea maandamano. Alafu swali yangu ni je?
Yes.
Hawa watu wenye wanatekwa nyara. Alafu kunaendanga aje na kama na wale wenye wameuawa kama ama polisi wenye walitenda hiyo kitendo kama wamechukuliwa hatua.
Okay, sasa kama watakuwa charged. We're running out of time. Samido, Oti, good morning.
Morning.
Karibu, morning to you too. Niko na the LSK president Madam Faith Adhiambo. Very briefly, swali yako ama comment because lazima tusikize news.
Kwanza wacha nimsalamie Faith Adhiambo na nimpongeze kwa kazi nzuri anafanya. Manake huyo ndio kwanza chia lady wa LSK wa kwanza kufanya kazi yake very independently.
Correct.
Hajaenda kulala na gava kwa nini moja kudhulumu wa Kenya. Sasa mimi nilikuwa namueleza hivi. Kwanza kuna watu ambao wameutewa sana wakati wa hizi protest na serikali.
Yes.
Wamechukua hatua gani kama LSK ku make sure kwamba wale polisi ambao walifanya hizo vitendo wameshtakiwa na familia wapate haki zao? Hiyo ndio swali yangu, maana kumesema time imeenda, ningemuuliza maswali mengi.
Na unauliza one more. I'll give you chance for one more.
Okay. Ya pili na mwisho. Kwanza mimi vile jana nilielezea kwa nikasema hatungependa vijana wetu waendelee kuuliwa namna hii kwa hii njia ambayo inaendelea.
Yes.
So ningependa ile pia wasimame wa Kenya na wahakikisha kwamba serikali inasikiza sauti ya Mkenya wa chini. Wasiende wakawalegeza kamba.
All right, asante sana Oti. Thank you so much. Acha tusikize news and then when we come back, Madam President Faith Adhiambo of the LSK and to wrap up, and of course she's going to respond to your questions. Right now it's 8 a.m. Twende kazi. Good morning my guys.
This is the Modern Vibes on Vibes Radio.
It's 7 minutes after 8. Watagwa, Nairobi, Kenya, Africa and the world. Nasikia Taj Mahal maze kumenza kunuka. Things are not easy. Jay, talk back. Taj Mahal, things are so bad. My guys, ukiona kitu kwa barabara, please let me know and kuwa safe, kuwa very safe. Madam President, Taj Mahal nasikia vitu zishaanza kuharibika.
Maze.
This time umeanza mapema 8. Hey. Mujuanga maandamano wanza ngapi hivyo saa 6, saa 5. Jesus Christ.
Watu wajalala.
Wase, yeah. By the unajua kuna time ilikuwa na chikoto ilikuanga kwa ex flani last week, actually over the weekend. Oh god, Jay kamu cheki, please sort out the headphones, Madam President. Wasali kwa nasema, you know, we're not going to relent. Ikitu by the kagava wanadhani tuta sustain, we're going to sustain it until 2027. Unadhani wasoko neo psych vile unajua wa Kenya.
Gen Z 2027 ban.
Guys are saying, imagine all the demands have to be met, but yeah, these are actually some very, very extraordinary times we are living in. So tumefunga 4 lines. Of course you can I want to talk to 2-3 Kenyans. Remember 0719012700, like you've had tuko na the president of the Law Society of Kenya, yepe ni youngin, that is Madam Faith Adhiambo. Unaweza piga simu maze kama uko na reaction yote. Let's talk to Richie Spice right about now. Richie.
Morning Matara.
Morning bro. Nilikushow Madam President ako hapa hivi in the building. Wewe unajua story ya kwa reli ili tushangaza sana. Talk to us mazo. Kuna swali ama comment, Jay, talk back.
Niko na swali tuanzie hapo kwa re. Sasa ni steps gani wamechukua kama LSK hapo tunao kupata hao victims wa kwa maji?
Ama victims wamefanya nini so far?
Alafu swali lingine ni kulikuwa ni demolition ya boti mambo na maji, kulikuwa Ruben mpaka Mkwanyenga mpaka Madhari. Hao victims bado hawajaliko mpaka saa hii. Wamechukua action gani mpaka saa hii?
Sasa sawa, asante sana Richie Spice. Okola, good morning.
Good morning mkurugenzi.
I'm very fine buda. Unaendelea aje lakini?
Niko salama na shukuru, niko mzima.
Smart sana. Of course we have the President LSK, Madam Faith Adhiambo. Talk to us, Okola.
Nilikuwa tu na wanda, unajua nasikia wakili akiongea. Kidogo imefanya nikafurahi, like naona sometimes ni mtu anatetea sana katiba.
100%,
so concern yangu ilikuwa inakuja na hii commission ya Kenya Human Rights.
Yes.
Hii ni commission ambayo iko founded with the power ya constitution.
Yes.
But sasa sijui njia ambayo inafaa kuwork, because naona ni kama kuna tussle kati ya that commission na vitu za state na the government.
Yes.
So I would like maybe ile guidance yake, na having in mind that also the president cannot be sued kama ako seated. So what's the way forward? Kama hizi maandamano hakuna petition yenye inapelekwa ama nini, so ile legal advice ndio hata tukijitoa tukiwa pale kwa street tunajua mahali tunajitetea. Shukran sana.
Thanks a lot, Okola. All right. David. Oh my God, David, ebu piga simu tena 0719012700. Guys, we have the LSK president, Madam Faith Adhiambo. Mwas, good morning.
Leaje?
Niko salama sana bro. Mukurueni mnaendeleaje?
Mukurueni kakido tuko fiki.
Mwas, tuko na Madam President LSK. Talk to us.
Mimi nasema hivi. Hii maandamano, unajua kuna watu wanaitilia kati. Ndio tunasema ni maandamano ya.
Okay, we clearly have a problem with our connection. I want to talk to 2 more Kenyans. Tukisota uti maneno ya simu 0719012700. Rafo babaki Jaden.
Ni aje Voke.
Niko salama sana bro.
Gotea Madam President asa hapo.
Madam President amegoteka sana manze.
Sana.
Mimi ndo nilikuwa namuulizaje. Juu hata nimeona hizi protest zimekuwa kibao na pia wasee wanapotea. na unapata hata makarau wanapiga wasee rive. Kwanza ni live bullet. Na pia hata wengine tunaona tu huyu mtu anajulikana kama LSK, Law Society of Kenya. Wanajaribu aje kuona huyo askari ama wale walipatikana huko Mukuru wamepata haki. Wamesimama kwa position gani?
Sasa manze, big ups. 07190127 and I'll take 2 more calls. David Nakam. Alulu, good morning.
Uza.
Yo, talk to us Alulu Buda, tuko na Madam President LSK,
Nasikia venye mnatuchanua kuhusu mambo na law.
Nice,
Okay, mimi ningependa tu kuzingatia kitu moja, unaona?
Yes.
As far as tunaongelea mambo na law, utapata the 3 arms of government. Uwazi wake. Uje mimi hakuna venye utapata, maybe unapata kitu kama executive inaingilia mambo ya judiciary. Yaani unaona ni kama kuna arm moja ndio na control the rest of, unaona?
Exactly.
So mimi swali langu tu ningependa tuelezee how can we make this thing to be, yani kama ni legislature wanawake yao, kama ni executive
independence za easy arms of government.
Hizo ndio vitu tunatry kuongelea, unaona? As far as tunaongelea mambo na law, lazima tuangalie law na pale mbele inawaka kama ni huku kwa ground.
All right. Asante sana Lulu. I have to cut you short. Pole sana bro. And finally David.
Good morning.
Morning to you too bro. Tuko na Madam President LSK.
Salimia sana.
Amegoteka.
So na salimia yego hapo. So mimi niko na swali. Na yangu ina concern about this identification.
ID cards.
ID cards. Kwa sasa kuna hiyo ID card, yani kuna tena wametuongezea maisha card. Na mimi najiuliza kwani kama Mkenya nafaa kujiidentify mara ngapi? Kwani mimi nafanya how many versions do I have of myself?
Exactly.
Because niko na driving license, niko na hiyo maisha card, niko tena sasa niko na NHIF, NSSF, the same person. I think I have almost 7. That identifying myself. So mimi ningependa sana kama Madam President manze anaweza sukuma hii issue. Manze we just need one card to done all of these things.
Exactly. Sasa. Thanks a lot David. My guys, remember we are on MVP report, about to wrap up the conversation. Tumekuwa tukiongea na the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Madam Faith Adhiambo, na tumepata hizo maswali. Umesikia vile Wakenya wamebonga. We call our listeners up hivi the MVPs, Vibes Nation. Some of the concerns wako nao ni justice. Au makara walikuwa wanatumia live bullets huko hivyo kudisperse crowds. Tulicheki many Kenyans lost their lives. Will they ever be charged? Watu walikuwa wanasema okay, IG Koome resigned, big deal, but that's not enough. Tunataka kuona watu wakikuwa charged. Will that ever materialize? Will anything like that ever happen?
Well, what we're trying to do currently is to collect evidence, and we've been working towards it. So that's why we're saying it's even a challenge, because we have to look for psychosocial support even as we try to record statements. Even if you remember the story of Rex, the problem of trying to identify the police officer is because there's no bullet. So even you cannot identify which police officer shot, because without the bullet you cannot identify to which gun and then to which police officer. And so that's why we are trying to even talk to people and advise that any person who is shot, the only way you can be able to identify who shot you is by ensuring that those bullets are not discarded. And that's what we are trying to be vigilant about. I know also Kware, they've asked about justice for those victims, and we have a team that has been working closely with the government pathologists to follow up, and what they found is that there are no bullet wounds on any of those victims, but we are following up with the families. We've assisted some to go and record statements at the DCI to also investigate, because DCI are mandated by law to also investigate those cases as they come up. In terms of the evidence of the cop who killed, and I've given that example.
But in fact, the cases where Kenyans unapata amechukua footage or even a picture, you're saying this is the cop, is actually firing a live bullet. You know, in a situation like that, is that evidence enough? Just footage ama a picture?
Footage on a picture is not enough. We need the bullet as well. Because you might have taken as if he's shooting, but maybe that gun was not the one that shot you. So you need that bullet in terms of ballistic evidence. And even the unfortunate, even some of the footages, because we have been asking for footages to be able to try and discern. No footage is clear enough to show that it's this police officer shot at a particular person. So that is the challenge, to try and be able to identify the same. So we are still working towards, and we're working, getting assistance, some from different experts, working with doctors as well, so that as a concerted team we'll be able to collect as much evidence as we possibly can.
Okay.
And that's why we keep doing also civic education to help. If a situation like that arises, you must secure the person. Even as you go for the operation, you must secure and get that bullet, because that is what they fear the most. You'll be able to identify that police officer.
Correct.
If you get that bullet. In terms of holding police accountable, yes, we have filed various suits against the different police, and we have been asking victims to come as well to LSK, irrespective of the ones that were shot by bullets or not, because we have people who are injured and who are part of the peaceful demonstrations. And so those as well, we want to follow up their cases, because government should compensate them, because they were injured when they were taking a peaceful protest, fighting for their rights as a citizen and as a nation. So we are still open to that.
And then Richie Spice asked about Kware.
Yeah.
The bodies that were found over there, and also to top it on, alikuwa nasema ile story ya demolitions ilikuwa happen up hivyo. Apparently there's some folks who are supposed to be compensated, but hajafanyika decide. What's the position of the LSK?
What would recommend is that we share with us the people who LSK can take up and help follow up with regards to those who have not yet been compensated. So we have not received any cases or reports on that. So if they could, we would be able to help follow up. With regards to Kware, it's an investigation. Unfortunately, you cannot identify the victims to any police shootings, but we are still receiving those who are open to LSK representing them. Yes. We are following up the cases with them as the investigation is ongoing. Tussle between the commission versus government.
Correct.
I say the commission still has its position. It's a constitutional body, and it should exercise their powers independent from any influence, and that's why they were made constitutional bodies. As the people of Kenya, we saw that if we do not give certain bodies constitutional powers, then what would happen even pre the constitution was that when the government is unhappy with you, either you'll be folded, the entire organization is folded, or the commissioners are kicked out. And hence that commission is independent and can carry out that's why they can demand, and they have also force of law if you don't share information. So they have their strong mandate, and they can continue to carry out their work independent from government interference. In terms of the three arms of government, I say our biggest, weakest link is Parliament.
Yes.
Because Parliament able to vet this budget, Parliament would have prevented the current situation of the finance bill if they were actually doing the work of representing the people. They would have told the government measures and ideas on how to reduce, and also act as a check to be able to identify, because now these things that are being done by executive is arising from a push directly from the streets. The president wouldn't need to negotiate directly with the streets if his representatives in Parliament were actually doing their work, listening to their constituents, listening to the voice of the people. They would be able to give back feedback, and now even give ideas on how to reduce an expenditure, the things that are now happening after the fact. And so even when they're saying that this is unprecedented, it's unprecedented because you failed in your mandate. You're supposed to be independent from the executive. But because you have made yourself an appendage of the executive, that's why we are seeing all sorts of ludicrous and hilarious statements being made by members of Parliament all fighting to please the head of state. Yet the only way I believe they should be pleasing the head of state is by giving the right advice that prevents such situations from getting to where they were. Wouldn't be in this particular place in our country. With regards to the judiciary, yesterday the Chief Justice raised that they have listened to some of the things being raised against the judiciary about the corruption.
Correct.
And that they'll be taking measures against corruption. And so notice has been given to them as well with regards to corruption in the judiciary. And I hope they take that seriously, because the Kenyan people, as much as possible, want to give the judiciary a chance, but they also have to show goodwill by protecting, because the judiciary is the only one that can defend the people against the excesses of government. But I had something as well that also is an indictment to the executive. They're talking about why should we go to courts if the executive will ignore court orders. And this has been a song, and even last year we were on the streets on a mandamano on the same issue of independence of the judiciary. And so by the executive undermining the different arms of government, they're the ones bringing themselves to their knees to the certain position that they are.
Yes.
Because if the people felt, the Gen Zs felt that they could trust the courts, if they felt that the court orders would have the force of law, they wouldn't be on the streets, they wouldn't be dying.
True.
And so also executive, it's high time they recognize that they must obey court orders, because it is in only that kind of democracy that we can have people living within the law.
Yes.
And because if you refuse to live as well within the constitution, you cannot say today that this is a democracy and people must carry out things within the law, yet you yourself, you refuse to obey court orders. Lead by example.
Yeah, there's also, as we wrap up, David kutoka Narumoro alikuwa anasema, yo, how much more do I need to identify myself as a Kenyan? History ya ID cards, kuna ile maisha card.
Hiyo maisha card yenye niko nayo, but it's one ID and then written maisha number, but unfortunately it's the expiry date.
Exactly.
That's why word out, please, mkipata ID mtapata prize. That is my sentimental ID. The reality is you shouldn't have to keep paying for an ID. The cost of ID has become more expensive, and the reality for Kenyans, it's an indictment to the executive. Most people feel it's just another way for you to mint money.
Yes.
And so the answer is no. And lastly, as we wrap up, I would like to say there was a question as how can LSK lead this discussion in terms of to ensure that the views of the young people are not ignored and are not forgotten. And LSK is ready and willing to moderate a discourse with the executive and the Gen Zs and the people of Kenya.
Yeah.
It's high time that we stopped having a dialogue of the deaf.
Yeah.
Let the two sides sit down and let's be able to listen to one another.
Yes.
Because by only listening to the challenges, because challenges are diverse, and as you said at the beginning of the show, there are different reasons why people are on the streets. And so it's only by listening and understanding why people are on the streets is when you can get people off the streets.
All right.
But there has to be an active listening. And as LSK, we've tried to remain independent all through, and that's why we're saying it's high time, let us have a sit down.
Okay.
Let's have a discussion.
Kuna mtu alikuwa anataka clarification about whatever the acting IG of police Douglas Kiricho alikuwa anasema he's warning the public against trespassing protected areas like JKIA during planned protests. Now these people are reasoning and saying that is those are Kenyan spaces. We are the ones who pay taxes to go and, to run those places. So we can go anywhere we want. Maybe you can give us clarification exactly how the law will approach this at the same time. Watu pia wanataka kwenda kupicket because they're saying that is their right and that is a Kenyan space using taxpayers' money to run it. So they can go anywhere they want. What do you have to say to people like that?
There are certain places that are delegated as protected spaces, and others are not protected spaces.
Yeah.
And so, yes, protected spaces you ought not, and particularly the state house and the state lodges are protected zones that you ought not, and that's why I always advocate against that, because protected spaces, it's someone is inviting you to your death, and so avoid protected spaces. But we've had people also talking about like Parliament. Parliament is not a protected space; it's not gazetted as a protected space.
Okay.
And so, but the reality is it's that destruction of public property. But as well as,
so basically unaweza ambia protesters wenye wana plan kwenda place ka JKA wasifike huko.
I advise it's keep yourself safe, be able to protest, but keep yourself safe. We need you alive, because you can make a difference, you can make an indelible mark in this country. We don't have to see your blood spilled for that mark to be met. It's a high time that both parties, both sides of the divide, we tone the notch down, and there's a role for everyone to play. The media play a very important role in the same, and that's why the media is saying don't kill us. The lawyers play an important role. The doctors have been playing as well an important role, and the Gen Zs, the millennials, the youth, and all members of Kenya play an important role. And so if we cannot sit down and listen to one another and come up with solutions, this country belongs to each and every one of us.
Yes.
And it's in our interest to protect this country.
Yes.
And the tone should start from the head of state.
Yeah.
Because if he changes his tone, then he's able to bring down the mood and the flares that are there in the country, so that people can actually sit down to focus on how can we move together as one.
Right. What is your rallying call to young Kenyans out there who are fighting for the soul of this country? Wase wamejam sana, they're frustrated, they're saying they're not going to relent until I'd rather not even say some other hashtags hapa hivi. Wamesema hii kitu hii wanaenda kusustain until whatever happens, you know, whatever uko mbele, you know. Conversations are ongoing online, on the ground, kwa machurch, kwa maba, kwa mashule, kila mahali. What would you tell young Kenyans listening to you as the Law Society of Kenya president, and you're very youthful? Give them the way forward, Maze.
My rallying call is to you is use this fire that you have to make a difference in your country. And some of you might not be able to go to the streets, but let us start thinking towards how can we rebuild the nation, because it's not just about going to the streets. It's about thinking what next. How do we grow as a country? How do we move forward? What are the solutions? And I've loved some of the solutions that I see people are talking about. People are talking about cutting expenses to areas. People are looking at the Appropriations Act. People are looking at the budget. It's high time then we focused and say, look at the education system. How do we make a permanent change? The health system. Why can't we fix the challenges in NHIF now that chief has been declared unconstitutional? How can we now use this fire that we have to make a difference? The energies that Kenyans have, the fire that Kenyans have, we can build a magnificent nation. Let us rally together to build our nation. Let's use that fire to focus on what are the gaps that are there. How can we work on them? How can we rebuild this nation?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That is the Law Society of Kenya president, Madam Faith Adhiambo, and it's all about not yet freedom. Mama niseme maandamano Tuesday. Imekuwa real, my guys, eh? When we come back, we'll see what's happening in the world of sports. Alafu pia next hour tunaenda kuangalia some of the top stories making headlines out there, by the way. All right. Good morning. I've got some still around gentleman, Benny Man. Twende kazi.
Nobody can stop reggae.